thank you again, and thank you for those that have joined us now. And we are now going on to our second sessions. But I haven't got my page in front of me to tell them what it's called. This is the
4 elements, 5 births, 7 birthdays, 1 year.
Okay, say that again.
4 elements, 5, 7 birthdays, and 1 year. That's the name of this class. Okay, good. Everybody get more fuel, eat something else, and let's learn. Okay, so today, now, is it okay? Yeah, here. Have room to put your. Okay, so the first class was heart, now the head. Now we're going to get into the head. Okay, so this is a teaching based on the Rambam, Maimonides, based on the Tanya, and based on a book called Getting to Know Your Soul by Rabbi Itamar Schwartz, a current contemporary rabbi in Eretz Israel. Again, Rambam, Maimonides, the Tanya, the primary book of Hasidus written by the Alter Rebbe, that's Rebbe of Chabad, and Rabbi Itamar Schwartz from Kiryat Sefer. And it's talking about, so there's 3, I have 3 purposes in why I teach this course. The first purpose is for you to fulfill the mitzvah of Ve'ahavta l'recha kamocha, loving other people, treating everyone with compassion and with kindness. That's purpose number 1. Purpose number 2 is to help us to stop judging others. That's a Mishnah in Pirkei Avos, don't judge. And purpose number 3 is, if you're going to judge already, to judge favorably. Those are my 3 purposes. If we can fulfill those 3 purposes to bring Mashiach, I'm not going to say to bring Mashiach close, I'm going to say to bring Mashiach, period. Then we are good. And so this is a lot of work, a lot of homework, and it's a lifetime project of understanding people, understanding yourself, letting go of people, of expectations, letting go of judgments, and accepting and really understanding. If a person has understanding, then they can succeed in life. If a person understands people and they understand themselves, then they have a heads up on, hi, I'm good, how are you? It's so cute to see familiar faces. I have no idea from where, but whatever. So the Torah tells us like this. In the beginning, I'm going to read to you, I'm going to tell you the first three verses of the Bible in Hebrew. The Reshit bara Elokim, in the beginning when God was creating it, Hashemayim, the heaven, the Haaretz, and the earth. The Haaretz, the earth, Haitzato Vavo, was formless and void. The Choshech al Pnei Tehom, there was darkness over the vast. The Ruach Elokim Rachefet, and the Spirit of God, the wind of God, was hovering al Pnei Hamayim, on the water. Vayomer Elokim, and God said, Yehi Or, let there be light. Vayehi Or, there was light. Okay, we all know that. You can read, everybody knows that, those psukim by heart. And so we just saw now, but if you pay attention, if you learn Torah, how'd you know? That's so cute. Thank you. Now good. Thank you so much. We're going to go back. Now you're going to learn how to learn Chumash. When you learn Chumash, you see the pshat, you see the pasuk, you see the verse, you see what it means. And now you go back and start analyzing every single word. Every single word in Torah is, hostess has to sit down and relax. That has to be the rule. Now we have to go and analyze every single word. So here, the haaretz, that's the earth, was tovavo, v'choshech al pnei tzam, ruach Elokim, and the wind of God, the Spirit of God, was over the mayim, was on the water. And then God said, let there be light. So we just mentioned 4 primary elements of creation: earth, haaretz, ruach, air, mayim, water, and eish, fire. 4 elements. Now, when I first began teaching this, I don't know how many years ago, my students said, oh yeah, there's a TV cartoon about that. Indeed, that's true. This is not just, everything comes from the Torah. Everything comes from the Torah. So if the world understands that there's 4 elements, basic primary creation, good, let them understand. There's no reason. We're not the only club that's supposed to understand God. The whole world, Jews, non-Jews, everybody's supposed to understand God, worship God, venerate God, love God, serve God, and in doing that, fix planet Earth. Everybody. So yeah, there's plenty of Torah that the world knows. Perhaps what they don't know, though, is that Hashem has a name that he has shared with us called Yud K Vav K. We call that the name Havaya, Shem Havaya, the name of God that entails existence. As we learned in the first class before, only Hashem exists. Everything else is a creation. Hashem has existential existence. Hashem exists. So in Hashem's name, Yud Kei Vav Kei, there's 4 letters. So Chazal tell us, this is a little bit of mysticism in Kabbalah, that everything could be broken down into 4s. Everything is 4s. Now you might say, we only have 3 Avos. Really, we have 4. Av, Yisroel, Yaakov, and Yisrael. Yisrael, who took over the job of Esav. That's the teaching from the Ramchal. There was supposed to be 4 fathers, just like there are 4 mothers. It's paralleling the 4 names of God, 4 letters of God's name, etc. North, south, east, west. Everything is in 4s. For our purposes, and just because I have only 2 hours to teach this, I'm going to do it very, very short. The 4 elements in the personality represent 4 different parts, 4 different ways that you can respond to any given situation. You can respond either in a practical way. That would be called the earth element. You could respond in an emotional way. That could be called the water element. You could respond in an intellectual way. That's the air element. And you could respond in a powerful spiritual way. That's the fire element. 4 ways to respond to any situation: practical, earth; emotional, water; intellectual, in your mind, analyzing and thinking, air; and the 4th element, the fire element, which is actually the highest element, represents power, passion, but spirituality, a connection to God. The neshama. The neshama is fire. That's what we light. And near neshama, we light a candle for someone's neshama. So how do you respond? Now you're going to say, well, it depends. If it's with the kids, I respond this way. If it's with my husband, I respond this way. If it's at work, I respond. Okay, so good. So we see that we have different responses based on different situations. But how do you primarily respond? What's your strongest? And how do you what's your weakest? So Chazal tell us, and this is again from the teaching called the Tanya. The Tanya bases it on the Shara Kedusha of Reb Chaim Vital, who was a student of the Ari HaKadosh. Everybody has a strongest element. Now, we're not going to start discussing nature and nurture. Bless you. Nature and nurture. Nature and nurture absolutely has tremendous influence on a person. Culture has tremendous influence on a person. When I began learning this and teaching it, I was working with Russians who had just emigrated from the USSR. And Russians, as you know, Russians, as you know, had a very hard. They were toughened. They were toughened by their experiences. So I could never get through to them. They were brilliant. They were in their head, but their heart, even their kids, were like, it was like a rock wrapped around them, because they were trained not to emote. So for sure, culture has a tremendous amount to do with. And we're going to try. I mean, if we had, it takes me 1 whole year to teach this class in seminaries in Eretz Israel. We'll get a little bit of a taste of this, and you could go online and we can continue with this in different settings with it. So Chazal tell us that every person has their strength, and that's where you shine, and that's what you should use in your career, and that's the power that you should use to access when you need to access strength. And everybody has a weak part of them, of these 4 elements, and that's where you usually, when your Yetzer Hara gets the better of you, that's where you usually fail, in the weaker elements. Now we have, we're all different ages here, Baruch Hashem, and we've been working on ourselves for forever. We work so hard on our midos. So sometimes a person naturally balances themselves. Sometimes a person doesn't analyze and say, oh, I'm really, really weak in in X, Y, and Z. They don't analyze it, they just know it. And that's better a chair. Let's see. But I want to see that. I want to see this Rebbetzin, so make sure I can see him. This hi, I want to see you. So make it so. Hashem always makes that everybody can be between each Mitzvah. Good. The weakest elements that you think your weakest element might actually currently be your strongest elements, because you've been working on yourself for such a long time that you don't even realize, and you don't remember how you failed as a teenager or as a young 20s and 30s until you said Adkan and took yourself by the, took the bull by the horns and said, that's it, I'm gonna fix. So, but what I want to do is I want to point out to you the elements so that you can identify this in your children or anyone, and learn how to communicate with them in such a way that they hear you and they feel your neshama, they feel that you care about them. So let me tell you a story that happened to me. Forgive me, that's how I teach. I just tell stories that happened to me. Hashem makes it happen that way. I was once working in a school, and the principal was going through a very difficult time in his own private life. And he was being very hard and mean to everybody. That's just how it was. And it wasn't like a secret. Everybody would dread coming into school because he was snapping at everyone and yelling at everyone. And of course, this is in America, and it was hard. And here it was a Kira school. I only taught in those kinds of schools. And here you have to be like inspiring, and you have to be in a good mood. And then the principal, as soon as you walk in, he says like, "What time is it?" Like it was hard to be in the mode of love when you were afraid that you were going to get fired any second. So none of us knew what to do. And I'm a particularly sensitive person. And it was very hard on me. It was very hard on me. So I was at that point, though, in my life, I was reading a book called Awareness by what's her name? No, by Miriam Adahan, who's a wonderful, wonderful person and lives in Eretz Yisrael. So I just happened to be reading her book then. And I said, you know what, let me analyze my principal. Here I was all of 25 years old. And let me analyze him and see like what's with him. And I analyzed him. Now I'm not promoting the Enneagram, which is the system that she uses. The reason I'm not promoting it is because I never found it in Torah. And even though the examples that she uses are always, very Torah example, but I never found a parallel in the Torah. The teaching that I teach now, the elements, it's a Torah-based psychology. And not that there's anything wrong with what she's doing, but I'm not promoting it, I'm not disagreeing with it. But I was just reading the book at that time. And I analyzed it and said, I understand where he's coming from, and I understand myself. And I realized that I have to give him praise. I have to compliment him. And that's going to be somehow make him feel better. So, so I began to do that. I came into school and I said like, oh, Rabbi so-and-so, the idea that you had, if anybody recognizes this, I'm changing the story a little bit. So if you think I'm talking about, don't pay attention. So I said, Rabbi so-and-so, like so much, I think the new plan that you have for collecting attendance is so brilliant. And I think the new plan that you have for whatever, I acknowledge him. And after a few days, all the staff began to say like, how come he's so nice to you and he's still so mean to us? And I said, because I see that you have to talk to him in a language that he understands. So sometimes you have to understand people, to talk to them in a language that they understand. When Hashem may mix up the languages, why did that make problems in the world? Because I was talking French and he was talking English, and I don't understand what you're talking about. I think you're insulting me. I'm really praising you. And how does that work? So you have to understand people's languages. Now, my students tell me there's such a book called 5 Love Languages or 6 or 7. I don't know how many. Okay, I don't know that book either. And I'm not promoting it, I'm not disagreeing with it. Haven't found that in Torah sources. This is in Torah sources. So we're Torah Jews, we want to get there's nothing wrong with other things, but we're rooting it at Torah sources. So did you have in your life a person who is totally disorganized, and is it driving you crazy? So if that's the case, every, oh, you just, everybody said, I thought it was just me. No, everybody, or maybe you're the person who's on this order and you're driving everybody else crazy. It could be. So what is that? So now if you would just reframe that as saying, this person doesn't have an earth element, or their earth element is very weak, or it's challenged. Okay, that's a whole different story instead of this person is so, disorganized and just doesn't respect me because I keep saying come on time and they never come on time and I put away your stuff and it's not about you. It's not about you. It's about they have perhaps a difficulty with the earth elements. Once you understand that, then you can learn how to deal with it. Sometimes it's just a matter of it never gets fixed. And that's also something you have to accept sometimes with yourself. Sometimes I see people, and you can tell by the way they respond that it's them. And they're thinking like, I hope she doesn't call on me to say like, because sometimes it's you and nowadays they'll hide behind all kinds of ADD, ADHD, all kinds of Rashi Tevos that they make for, but it could be you have a very weak earth elements. And there's a fixing for that in the Torah. Let's say you're always crying and you watch a movie, you start to cry. You see an old lady, a yeshiva kid walking, an old lady across the street, you start to cry. What is that? And that's mine. It's okay. It just tells me that I'm late for class in Israel. So okay, they know I'm here. Neve sends regards, by the way. Neve Yerushalayim and Midrash Tehillah and all the different programs I teach, and I teach in a program called Shivitziu. Neve Yerushalayim sends regards. They're the ones who I had to get mostly permission from to come here. So, Kol HaKavod to Neve Yerushalayim. Is anybody here? And Neve? Yeah. Okay. Who's that over there?
Sally.
Hi, Ellie. Okay. So now we have the concept of elements. The concept of a person could be very naturally organized. Earth elements is organized. Water elements is emotional, but very psychic and very into people and understands people and wants everyone to be happy because they're emotional. They want everybody else's emotions to be feeling good. Some people are incredibly in their head. They have a strong air element. And that's me, actually. I have a very strong air element. They're always thinking, speaking, analyzing, counseling, communicating, learning. They love the mind. They love thoughts. They love ideas. They're never alone because you always have Baruch Hashem, your mind to think and to use your mind. That's a strong air element. And some people take charge. They know how to get things done. They're never satisfied. They always have another project, another goal, another idea, another something. And that's the fire element. They're the ones who people look at as leaders. And they just know how to get things done. Now, you might say, I'm a little bit of everything. Yes, you are. And hopefully you are. And hopefully you're a balanced person because we need to access all four of these elements in different stages of our life. But what gets you messed up? Where does your Yetzer Hara get you the most? Does your Yetzer Hara get you the most in arrogance and gaiva, pride, being controlling? Is that where your Yetzer Hara bothers you? Or does your Yetzer Hara bother you in that you're very needy physically? I need to be comfortable. I need everything to feel good. I need to have beautiful outfit. I need to have a beautiful whatever. Is my materialistic? Is that messing me up? Do I have lack of self-control? Do I get addicted or drawn to things that perhaps I shouldn't? That's the water element. Do you get lazy? And do you get stubborn? And do you get sad? Is that what pulls you down? Depression, pessimism, lack of achievement, that's it, that's earth. Heavy, physically heavy, eating too much, not moving, that's earth. Is that where your Yetzer Hara is? Which one did I leave out? Or is your Yetzer Hara in air? Do you talk too much? Do you think too much? Do you overthink? Do you worry? Do you speak chas v'shalom critically, cynically, or chas v'shalom hurtfully? That's air. So where does your Yetzer Hara get you? So you might say every day is a different Yetzer Hara. That's right, you're human, but you have a primary weakness. Everybody has a primary weakness. And as I said, in my survey, in my, experience teaching holy Jewish women for many, many decades, I noticed that a lot of times when I look at there's a way to do this actually technically to see what your weakness is. And it does have to do with your birthday. There's a way to technically see that. But oftentimes I look at someone's weakness that it came out technically based on their birthday, and that's actually their strength. That's because they've been really working on themselves for a very long time, and they transformed, as the Torah says, they did such a teshuvah, they did such a turnabout in their life that they transformed their weakest part into their actually strongest part. Okay, that's general overview of the 4 elements. I'm going to give now a few more descriptions of each of the 4 elements so that you get a flavor of what they are. So I'm going to start with the earth element. The earth element is like earth, solid, reliable, dependable, loyal, organized. The earth is very predictable. Planet Earth that we're sitting on, that we're living on right now, is very predictable. We have seasons. We have, you plant an apple seed, you get an apple tree. There's rules about how Hashem made planet Earth. He calls it the rules of nature. But it's a concept of rules. So a person who's very into rules, who knows rules, who follows the rules. And rules doesn't just mean rules of the traffic or the whatever. It means also the rules of life, which contain an element of orderliness to them. That's all earth elements. Tanya teaches that the negative of the earth element is too stubborn. Now, the Jewish people are called what? What are we called? Yeah, we're called a stiff-necked people. We're amkshe oref. We're very stubborn, right? We use stubbornness in a good way. We're stubborn in that for almost 2,000 years, Hashem has been testing every one of us, because we're not just here this now. We're here in all, we've been here for many, many lifetimes. And Hashem is testing us again and again. And we're loyal. We're dressed properly. We're eating kosher food. We're making blessings. We're keeping Shabbos. We're loving Eretz Yisrael. We're hosting. We're doing Hafnasas Orachim. We're doing, taking care of people who are in need. Thousands of years of exile and torment, and we're stubborn. We say, Hashem, I will not leave you. I'm not going to betray you. I am loyal to you, Hashem. And, Holocaust stories where people say, Hashem, I don't care what you do to me. I'm going to die a Jew. I'm going to live a Jew. I'm going to die a Jew. We should all live as Jews, only living. Amen. But, we know our stubbornness. We know exactly how stubborn we are. So the positive of stubborn with the negative of stubborn in the earth elements. Now, what does stubborn mean? Stubborn means I'm not going to think. I'm not going to open my mind to think. I am who I am. This is who I am. This is how I'm going to be. This is how my mother was. This is how I'm going to be. This is how I want my kids to be. I don't change. That idea of not moving the mind is a negative aspect of earth. Not allowing the mind to develop. And so actually the earth, the 4 elements have opposites. Earth is always opposite air, and fire is always opposite water. So whatever we'll say about one element, the opposite is true of its other. So for example, if I tell you that earth is logical and loyal, its opposite, which is always air, is air has a level of not logical and not loyal. And if I tell you that air speaks and thinks, then earth doesn't speak and think. That's not that's not the easiest thing for them to do. So, again, because Hashem is so kind to me and he's privileged me to speak with girls for, thousands of years. So sometimes a woman, a person makes an appointment, they come down to speak. And the beginning, and the time is, oh Hashem, a lot of people, time is not like, so I want them to get to the point. And they'll start with, so how are you today? And thank you so much for seeing me. And is it okay if like, there's these hakdamas, all these introductions, like, no, tell me what you want. But they have an earth element, and it's hard for them to communicate. So I have to help them to communicate. I'm teaching you that because you're going to encounter some of your own kids who are going to come home from school. How was school good? Or how was school bad? What happened? Nothing. What you learn? No, nothing. Same old. You have to recognize, oh, there's the earth element in this kid kicking in. This kid right now is trying to ground himself or herself because earth is grounding. They need to be grounded. They don't want me to talk to them right now, but they need to talk. I'm going to have to figure out a way to give them some earth right now. They need earth. How do I know? Because it answered me in one word sentences. They need earth. They need to be grounded. They need to feel secure. I'm going to give them some security. Sometimes that means, food. That's a very big thing by earth and by water, food. Have a potato. Potato's like one of the most earthy foods you could give them, So, or let's eat something. Sit down and let's eat. No talking. And then when they feel grounded, comfortable, then you have to be skilled. All of us are skilled communicators. And, so instead of saying, how was school? Say, however you can answer that question. What exactly do you want to find out about this kid's school day? You don't care, about everything. You just want to know certain things. So be pointed in the questions that you want to ask in a very, very non-threatening way. So one of my colleagues actually had to speak. So there's a very, very gifted child in Eretz Yisrael, very, very gifted. He's now, I don't know, 8, 9, 10. He's going to be great. He's a remarkable neshama. And sometimes you can spot these remarkable neshamas. So he wanted to ask this kid all these questions, like, when is Mashiach coming? All these kind of questions that we want to know, like, when's this over already? When we can go to the Beis Hamikdash and just dance and revel in God's happiness? But you can't ask that to a kid. He won't. So this colleague was asking him certain questions, and instead of asking more questions and deepening, he would just repeat the kid's answer. Now that's a big thing now in psychology. Oh, really? You learned Chumash? It's so great. And 10 minutes later, he came back and asked another question. You have to learn. You have to ask Hashem to help you to figure out how to once you analyze the person's Mida, earth, air, fire, water, strength or weakness, then comes tefillah. And this is really my number one prescription for everything. For everything, you have to talk to Hashem. Please, Hashem, help me with this and be very specific. The last thing that we're going to learn in the first class that we're learning, the last thing that the Ram says is exactly what I was just telling you now. So I'm giving you a heads up for tomorrow. Be very specific in asking Hashem, I need to get this child to feel comfortable enough to relax so that he doesn't get nightmares tonight. I don't know, I just made that up. Okay, so earth element, loyal, strong, organized, on time. Everything that I just said is the opposite. Air elements, they're not so loyal. They're not on time. They're not organized, etc. Some of the greatest minds, need a secretary because they can't find their stuff, right? So they need the organizer. They need a personal assistant, right? Because they're in their head. That's air, and they're talking and counseling and helping and listening and researching. But they have no idea where their car keys are. And they have no idea that they have to eat and etc. So they need the earth element. And so at this point, when I usually do this idea, people say, so should you marry your opposite? And I always say what Rabbi Yitzchak Ginsburg told me years and years ago when I first began teaching this in Eretz Yisrael. He said, anybody could marry anybody. as long as you recognize the dynamic and you're committed to making it work. So before you get married, you have to know this person is this way, very emotional. Can I handle that? Can I deal with that? This person's very logical. This person doesn't speak. This person only speaks and doesn't do anything. Can I handle that? Or do I feel so committed to this relationship that I will turn myself into a pretzel to be able to handle that? So anybody can get along with anybody. Opposites for sure attract. They definitely attract. The only thing is they have a hard time sustaining. The sustaining is what works hard, is what takes the work. The attraction is easy. Like, oh, you're going to make my reservations for me and carry my luggage? I'm so grateful to you. That's air, earth. Oh, you're going to make the plans? I'm so grateful to you. But then later, can I have a conversation? 100 years later, we're married 120 years, right? Do we have anything to talk about? I have nothing to talk about. I just do everything. But I have a million things to talk about. But you've been talking to me for 100 years. You told me everything. No, I have 100 new things to tell you. So that's where the dynamics have to come in. And that's where the other person has to know one about the other. So air. Air is always in their head. ADD became a very air thing because we have something called air pollution. We have earth depletion in planet Earth, right? We have earth depletion. It's funny because one of your sons said to me, he said, I heard you eat organic. I don't know, I guess he wanted to say that the hachnasos orachim that I have by the doves is above and beyond. And the hachnasos orachim I have from Rebecca, who bought all these organic teas and all of this stuff, and there's even fruit on the table. So the idea that the elements create this, we're so much at the end of time that everything is polluted now. So we have air pollution. Air pollution in the physical turns into, or is the result is ADD in the mind. It doesn't mean that because you eat, it doesn't mean that because you breathe polluted air, you get ADD. No. Everything in the physical world is always going to be a parallel in the spiritual world. So the fact that we have pollution in the physical world, the idea in the spiritual world carries through, and we have people have a hard time thinking, analyzing, conversing, communicating. Now, I'm Chasdei Hashem, I'm teaching for many, many years, and I can see the Yeridas Hadoros in teaching. Anybody who's a teacher for a few decades knows that what you could teach a few years ago, this topic, for example, what I teach, I never would have taught this 20 years ago. And that they would never have let me taught it because, like, what is this? You're teaching about personalities from the Torah. Teach Chumash and Rashi. Teach halacha. Teach midrashim. But no, now the mind shifted. And now we need to teach other things because the mind needs different things, because the mind on a certain level, we're the highest generation, you have to believe that, because Mashiach is coming any second. On a certain generation, we're a weak on a certain level, we're a weak generation. So air pollution, and that's why the world is crazy. That's why the thoughts of the world and what's going on in this world and the philosophies of the world and the woke, which is so not woke. It's not awake. It's so verschlafen. It's like the old Avodah Zarah from a few thousand years ago. They think it's a new idea. No, the Avodah Zarah from thousands of years ago is just resurfacing but the mind has changed and it's reflected in the air, the quality of the air. Okay, so that's one idea. Now the earth doesn't get polluted, it gets depleted. And that's why when you eat food nowadays, it speaks to an old timer. My mother, she should rest in peace and be a good debate for all of us. She used to say, you can't imagine what real fruit tastes like. The old fruit or the old cheese, she would talk about like the old food. And she said, this is nothing. And this is, a long time ago. And now what are we eating? We're eating everything artificial. Sometimes, and in Eretz Yisrael, Chasdei Hashem, that when you come to Eretz Yisrael, eat a lot. Eat whatever, because all the food in Eretz Yisrael is nurtured. The tzaddikim say this. the food in Eretz Yisrael is nurtured by prayer. Even though the rain comes and we have all kinds of ways of spritzing, what's that called? Like irrigating, right? But really all all food in Eretz Yisrael is a product of the prayers of the tzaddikim and the Jewish people. When you make a bracha here, you cause a beautiful tomato to grow in some place in Beit Shan. So in Eretz Yisrael, come to Eretz Yisrael and eat all the fruits and vegetables that you can.
Not at waffle.
Certain things you shouldn't be eating because we imported too much of the Western world, but the fruits and vegetables, yeah, for sure, you eat as much as you can. Everything that you eat is filling you with holiness and kedusha. So I told that to your son. I said, "There's some not selected on organic." Anyway, so the earth is depleted. What does that mean? The earth is depleted spiritually. It means earth means action. It means doing actions. Nowadays, people, their actions, they're not doing what they're supposed to be doing, not behaving. Their actions are not. They might look a certain way and perhaps hope they're a certain way, but the actions, how do you actually live? What's your daily? Is it depleted? Do you go to shul? Do you go to shiurim? Do you sponsor? Do you host? Do you give charity? Do you give it with a full heart? How are your actions? Are they weak or are they full? That's earth element depletion physically reflects in the personality and also people's behavior. Nowadays, does anybody go to work anymore? Everybody's working from home. Now we had Corona, right? So in the beginning, it was fun to be able to work from home, but then it became like, no, I'm not, my students taught me so many things about what they did on computers, what they were able to do when they were supposed to, they figured out how to put their face on the Zoom, on the screen. And on the other hand, but they have something else and they're playing at the same time. And it looks like they're engaged in the class, but they're totally not. Okay, so earth depletion means our behavior got weaker. How many people here can say that they can, did you stay up all night, Shavuos? And were you exhausted if you did? And did you sleep for the next 4 days? Our physical actions are weaker. How many, whatever, in Eretz Yisrael, they have night kollel. The men learn all night. It's like they belong to kollel. So there's a midnight kollel from midnight to nights. How many are there in Eretz Yisrael? You have more. Here, I don't know if you have any. The actions, the activities. Okay, that's the weakness. Now comes the positive of air is that all teachers, thinkers, have to have air in them to be able to communicate. How do you know if you're a teacher? So I tell my students this because a lot of them want to become teachers or a lot of them don't want to become teachers and I want to convince them that they should or tell them that they should. So a teacher is somebody who, as soon as they have a thought, they have to share it. That's a teacher. That's a born teacher. As soon as they are inspired, they have to share it. As soon as there's something that enters into their Dalet Amos, into their field, they have to share it. Now, how do you know if you're a water person? If the same thing happens with emotion. As soon as you feel something, you want the other person to feel. So you want to feel good, you want them to feel good. My mother, she should rest in peace. We come from a family where that music is very important. It skipped my generation. My son loves classical music. My mother loved classical music. I grew up with it in the house. So my mother, whenever she would hear a beautiful piece, she would, in olden days, when I was younger, there was something called radio. My mother would call me, she would say, turn on to WQXR. They're playing now, whatever. And I would say, okay, mom, whatever. I wasn't as mitlahev as she. And it was hard for her because she was full of emotion. She wanted me to be full of emotion because she was a water sign. She had a lot of water in her. So the water element is emotional. That's why when we emote with tears. How come when we emote, when we're emotional, we don't cough? Hashem could have made it like that whenever you get emotional, you cough. Or I don't know, you faint, whatever. We emote with tears. And we emote, when we feel emotions, we get flushed because our blood, which is the water element in the body, it moves further. It moves, right? It circulates. And we're chas v'shalom embarrassed when we have a negative emotion. We lose the emotion. The blood stops. It's right. So the water is the emotional part of us. It's a part of us that actually is mostly enjoying life. Chazal tell us that the water element, the reason Hashem made the body mostly water, is because Hashem wants us to enjoy life. And Hashem wants our bodies to be comfortable. Now, it doesn't mean that there's an extreme to that, of course. The extreme is chas v'shalom addiction is too comfortable. I can't function unless first I have my shower, then I have my coffee, then I watch this, and then I do this. And only then can I think about davening. So sometimes we become too meshubad, too enslaved to the water element. But Hashem wants us to be beautiful, loving, emotional, enjoy life, happy. That's the water element. The water element can sense other people's emotions. So they can sense when somebody is happy, they like that it's a good energy. They can sense when someone's nervous, and sometimes it makes them like, I can, they'll call it now in the lingo of now, like bad energy, that person's upset. They sense some kind of a negative. They walk into a room and they're a barometer. They can say right away, oh, I can cut it with a fork. Right? I feel this is a great place to be. This is a person I like to hang around with. This is a person who I have to avoid. And I don't know, like they're nice, they're good, but are you changed? Oh, this is a charging thing?
That's a charger there you're talking.
I'm here?
Mhm.
That's all these things. That's the emotional part. The emotional part, the water element, is the part that loves music, art, beauty, the beauty of the world. I love looking at, I like to look at you guys, but it's such a nice view I have here of this beautiful green garden. And I know that British people are into gardens and gardening, and anyway, that's the water element. Now, the water element is opposite of the fire. So whatever water likes, fire doesn't care about. The fire elements, I'm not going to now do opposites. I'm going to do now a direct for fire, and then you'll see the opposites. Fire has goals. The fire is like the sun. It's the high energy. Water sometimes has low energy. What happens with water? It spills. It evaporates. Fire, the sun has high energy. They don't sleep because they can't, because their brain, fire element is connected to the air element. Fire in the physical world needs air, right? In order for fire to be kayam, you need oxygen. The fire they don't need to sleep. They have so many plans, so many ideas. And they like power, and they like money. And they like anything that gets them ahead in this world. So fire goes up. If you light a match, it goes up. Turn the candle upside down, it still goes up. Fire is always aiming upward. You have that child who has to get 100. You got a 95. I don't know what the numbers here work like. Yeah, you got a 90. You should be happy with your 90. The mother's so happy. You got a 90, and the kid is like so disappointed. I want 100. What do you need 100 for? Don't pressure yourself. The mother says. The kid says, I want 100. I want to be the head of the class. I want to be whatever. That child has a fire. That child has pride. Fire is about a healthy pride. So Rav Avram Tversky, alav shalom, such a special teacher, a gift to Klal Yisrael. So he had a lot of fire in him. How do I know? Only because he told us, he didn't say that he has fire in him, but he told a story about himself. When he was little, when he was younger, his father, he said, his father was a Rebbe. He comes from Rebbe's family, and he became a psychiatrist, a doctor. And then he made rehab centers, and so he said that when he was younger, his father, who was a Rebbe, in order to get him, to discipline him, he used to say to him in Yiddish, "Is pas nicht for dir." Whatever he would do that was like a little bit too mischievous, or he didn't go to school. I'm just making that up. Whatever he did that the father felt that he had to reprimand him, he would say to him, he wouldn't say like, I can't believe you did that. He would say, for you, it's pas nicht. You're great. What you just did is pas nicht. Now, I don't know how to translate it in English. It's beneath your dignity, not becoming, it's lowering of who you are. And he said, that's what worked for him. It worked. As soon as he found that this behavior was pas nicht for him, it was beneath his dignity, beneath his standing in this world. He right away said, I don't want to be lower than I'm supposed to be. And he immediately changed. And look what he became in this world. He was a Rebbe. He was a psychiatrist, a doctor. He had a famous rehab, and he dressed in a Chassidish way. because he had pride in himself and he had power in himself. His father gave that to him. His father figured out how to say it in a way that he could hear it. Okay, now if it's a kid who's emotional, then a father would have to say a different way of reprimanding. Something like, now this might sound terrible to a world of psychologists, but which my son's a psychologist. I hope he doesn't think this is terrible of me to say this, but with a child who's very emotional and they're doing destructive behavior to themselves, you might say something like, "You're breaking my heart." Now that kid doesn't want to break anybody's heart because he's emotional. And it's going to hurt you in the end. It's going to be not good. It's going to hurt you. That kid doesn't want to be hurt. They want to be pleasure. They want to enjoy life. It's not going to make your life better. It's going to make your life worse. So there you touch the water elements, and the child's going to think about this and accept that, because the parent is on the same side. The child wants to have a good life. The parent wants to facilitate that. Okay, so the fire element. Now the fire element is concerned with all greatness. That's why in the neshama, that's why in the body, the fire element is the highest, and it represents the neshama. It's the highest, and it is rooted in spirituality. Now, what's the negative of fire is that it destroys. Right now in America, they're having these forest fires in Canada. Just to show you, everybody's trying to figure out like what's the Muslim. It's crazy. They sent me pictures. Everybody was inside. My granddaughter came back from seminary that day. She landed in JFK. I was afraid they wouldn't be able to let her land because they closed the other airport. But she said it's like crazy. It was, how did that happen? That the fire polluted the air. The fire polluted the air. That means spiritually, now that we're talking, the person's desire for power and greatness messes up their minds. It pollutes their minds. It makes them like Hitler in Machshema, the Zichra, right? His obsession, his fire. You ever hear? We shouldn't listen to him speak, but if you ever in the past heard of, or he was screaming like a maniac. His fire was vicious. And it corrupted his air. It polluted his air. And it polluted not just his air, but the air of the whole world, because he convinced the whole German people to, right? So fire can pollute. Fire can get out of control. Fire is power. Used well, it's the most amazing thing. The sun, Hashem made us a sun. Hashem said, I'm making you the power source. Use it well. But if it burns you, then you have to know that power can burn. The positive of the fire elements is they're motivators. They love not just that a holy fire is, they don't just want to succeed themselves. They want you to succeed. They want to motivate you. They want to push you. Those personal trainers in the physical world, and the people who do, what's that called when they do what's it called? The personal trainer for your emotions. What's that? Coaching, life coaches. That's a fire element. A fire element wants you to improve, wants you to be better, wants you to succeed, wants you to have the best that you can have. That's a fire element in a holy way. Fire element in a destructive way is they want to destroy you so that they could be the greatest. So now you see water and fire opposites. Water just wants to enjoy, and fire will not enjoy so that they can succeed. They will dafka, not sleep, not eat, not take care of themselves so that they can then, excel. Okay, that's the four elements. Now, tomorrow we're going to learn Be'ezrat Hashem that the four elements, but there are 7 places in your life that they can manifest. It's not that you'll have only one element. There are 7 different boxes in your life, categories, and you have a different strength and elements in every different category of your life, which is perhaps why some of you are thinking, I can relate to this and I can relate to that, because you can, but in different boxes and different elements. Let me just go through the mitzvahs and show you how Hashem in his genius, now for me to say Hashem is a genius, it's like silly, but Hashem in his genius gave us the 4 elements in every single mitzvah. Let's see. Let's say, for example, Shabbos. How do we start Shabbos? Fire, exactly. Then what's in the fire? That's candles, right? What's the next thing we do? What are the women doing before the Shabbos starts? They're cooking. And what's cooking? Huh?
Preparation.
Water. Cooking is water. Pleasure. Yeah, cooking is water. I know we use food, but cooking is water because I'm going to enjoy the food. You have to go. It's okay. I saw you have to go. Go. You're very welcome. Thank you. Thank you. So before Shabbos, Hachanot for Shabbos, we're cooking. That means that we're accessing the water elements. And right after we bench lift, we do the beginning of the Shabbos. The next thing we do is what? We make Kiddush. So we make Kiddush on yayin, on wine. Some people use grape juice, but really on wine, because wine is the most pleasurable of all things. Meaning, bread, challah, is the most grounding of the foods that we eat. In general, I'm talking about like categories of food, and wine is the most pleasurable. Wine leads to emotions, leads to pleasure, etc. So we bench lift, and then we before Shabbos have cooked, and then as soon as Shabbos begins, we eat. Before we eat, between the candle lighting and the eating, we go to shul or we daven. Now, the davening, interestingly enough, is the most unusual davening. You have to go also. The most unusual davening in that we say Kabbalat Shabbat. We sing. Go. We sing Kabbalat Shabbat, and singing is water. Because praying with the words is air, but singing is a pleasurable form of praying because it's pleasurable and because it's inducing. It's a music that's water. So we have now. We started with fire, bench lift, and then we have water beginning and water right away, right? Okay, then what do we do the rest of the day? We learn and we daven. So I'm privileged when I go to the Yenuka for Shabbos, when we have davening there. So he gives a 2-hour shiur 3 times, sometimes 4 times. And it's learning nonstop. So I now understand how my own students feel at the end of the day. They always give me a neve, either the first class early in the morning to get the girls out, or the last class at the end that they should come. And when I see them sometimes in the last class, they're schmatzes already. They're exhausted because they've been lived all day long. They've been learning and learning. They're full, but they need to now, do something, something else. So when you're full, so Torah on Shabbos, we spend the rest of the day, either we eat, or we learn, or we daven. That's how Shabbos is supposed to be. And if you're home with kids, so you're playing with your kids, you're in a different part of the Jewish army. But if you're not, then you're going to be in shul. You should go find a shul that you like and go to it, get there early in the morning, learning, davening. The Torah reading is the learning part. And the davening is obviously, that's all. What element is that? Air. That's the air element. Now, what part of Shabbos is earth?
Okay.
What part? Okay, resting, correct, because you're not doing anything, right? Because activity is creative activity. Shabbos' creative activity is restraining yourself, holding back from creative activity. So resting is earth. We're lying on the earth, so to speak. We're lying down, right? And also, now this is the earth element of Shabbos is all the details of the laws of Shabbos. So how to use how do you make a tea on Shabbos? And can you carry in this place or that place on Shabbos? And can you play this game with the kids on Shabbos? And all the details of the laws of Shabbos is the earth elements. Now, the details, oftentimes people think that the details are the least spiritual of anything, right? But think about it. Let's say when you were dating, you're dating your husband for 10 years and he didn't propose. That's pretty frustrating, right? You need the bottom line. The bottom line is the details. So Chazal tell us that in order for a person to feel Shabbos, feeling is what element? Water, good. In order to feel Shabbos, you have to do the earth element of the details of Shabbos. Because think about a plant, earth, watering the earth, right? When you water, the earth absorbs the water and then brings forth a beautiful plant or a beautiful fruit or whatever. So Shabbos, the laws of Shabbos, the details of Shabbos, how to keep Shabbos. Everybody by their Shabbos table should have a laws of Shabbos book. And every Shabbos meal you should read a minute of the laws of Shabbos. And then when you finish that book, read it again and again. Now, all of us grew up, most of us grew up Shomer Shabbos. So we know how to keep Shabbos because our parents, we know. I remember when my grandfather, he should rest in peace, when they tried to bring a Shabbos clock to make the lamp go on. And he was protesting it. He said, we never had such a thing before. And he was horrified that you can't, Shabbos afternoon, you sit in the dark. And so he was an old Chassidish man. He would not allow a Shabbos clock in the house until my aunt, he lived in my aunt's house at the end of his life. He lived for a very long life, Baruch Hashem. And my aunt needed that Shabbos clock on because they were not going to listen in the dark. And she didn't want to keep the big light on all night. She didn't want to keep it on all night. He said, Shabbos doesn't matter. Money doesn't matter. Money doesn't matter. Keep all the lights on. You're living in an electric world. He was excited, had excited for electricity. Leave it on. They didn't want the electric on all night. So they took my grandfather to the rabbi, and he sat down and in Yiddish, he explained to my grandfather, what could you do? They're Americans. And, it's halakhically permissible. It's true. It's not like in Europe. But and that's how he made my grandfather, all right. And he left. So, but to learn the details of Shabbos, to learn the laws of Shabbos is very, very important. To learn the laws of anything is important. To the details, we have to finish. The details are important. Try to send an email without putting the dot in front of the .com, right? gmail.com, right? Don't put the dot. You think the computer has had trillions and trillions of emails. All of these years that we've had emails, you think it would know how to read it? No, you need the dot. That's the earth element, is the details of life. Okay, go. You're sitting for a long time. Finish the food on the table. Be'ezrat Hashem, thank you for coming. Now I'll talk to all of you for the rest of the day, but officially class is now over, and you can go to where you need to go. Don't forget to make a bracha achrona if you ate enough. If you didn't eat enough, eat some more. And thank you again to the hostess. And thank you again to all of you for coming, for all of you who drove other people. It's really, it did me, my heart is very warm. I love you all. I'm proud of you all. And I hope I see you all tomorrow because I'll be here next tomorrow and Wednesday. There's one of these programs.
Yeah, so the Wednesday does need booking. And just in case anybody is interested, we even